The Answer continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. One of the many executive orders signed by President, again, Trump yesterday was to formally establish the DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. And by the way, I guess Vivek is out. He's going back to Ohio, apparently, to prep to run for governor. I don't know. There's also rumors there may have been a bit of a falling out between Musk and Ramaswamy, but regardless, DOGE moves forward. Uh-huh. A good piece by Kyle Peterson, Wall Street Journal editorial board, very much like some of the speechifying and publications Rand Paul has put on, just talking about how massive and cosmically silly our government is. Our government where the Federal Register, the inventory of federal regulations, runs 107,000 pages. Jeez. If the law is unknowable, you don't have the rule of law. Kyle Peterson provides some recent examples of what DOGE is up against. The Agricultural Marketing Services, using the power vested in it by the Watermelon Research and Promotion Act of 1985. You remember that?
Oh, I love that one.
The Agricultural Marketing Services, using that power from the Watermelon Research and Promotion Act of 85, approved a request to increase the assessment rate from 6 cents per hundredweight to 9 cents. The extra cash will be deployed by the National Watermelon Promotion Board to, quote, strengthen the position of watermelons in the marketplace, unquote. As Kyle Peterson says, so watch out, big cantaloupe. Watermelon's coming for you. Separately, the feds are holding a referendum of natural grass sod producers to see if they favor a similar setup. I mean, I always say you got to check. Wow. You make a change to, the watermelon protocol. You have to check with the grass sod producers to see if they're on board. Another example of what we're talking about. The International Trade Commission determined after a 220-page investigation under the Tariff Act of 1930 that U.S. manufacturers are likely being injured by underpriced, quote, imports of paper file folders from Cambodia and Sri Lanka. It's about time somebody stuck it to Cambodia and Sri Lanka. This trade case was initiated, International Trade Commission, by the Coalition of Domestic Fold Manufacturers. Did you renew your membership?
I was thinking about it. I don't know.
Which wants protectionist duties on, the folders that they produce. The Trade Commission has also invited public input on another pending business complaint entitled Certain Urine Splash Guards and Components Thereof. I'll let you know how that turns out so you don't have to keep up with it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. These are the sorts of things that you get when you have a government that is, millions of people strong in terms of employment and gets into all of the little nooks and crannies of the lives of people who are supposed to be living as free citizens. It's remarkable. It's funny and it's unfunny at the same time. For more on DOGE and the work they should do, pleased to be joined by Bob Woodson, founder and president of the Woodson Center, author of A Pathway to American Renewal, Red, White, and Black, Volume 2. The latest volume is out. A Pathway to American Renewal. Bob Woodson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Dan. Always a pleasure.
So where should DOGE start first? Those domestic fold manufacturers or the watermelon board? What do you think?
Well, I think they need to start with something that has a much more direct effect on injuring the least of these. Back in the 60s, I fought against some major policy changes that had a devastating effect on hundreds of institutions that were successfully serving black elderly during the time of segregation. And these were institutions that were established next to the church so that family members could care for their elderly and cook meals and come and care for them. But then the Comprehensive Mental Health and Mental Retardation Act was put in place. And what it did was it started to require such institutions to have an elevator and on any floors over 2 stories, even though it was elderly were on the first floor. And as a consequence of these regulations, it drove thousands of them out of business. And instead, they, rather than giving money for the local institutions to meet some requirements, they built these huge structures outside of the community, where and as a consequence, elderly were compelled to go into these high-end institutions that were run by consulting firms, and as a consequence, the number of black elderly deaths skyrocketed during that time because it just disturbed this whole network of elder care institutions. That's just one example of how government intervened and destroyed a whole network of people, monetizing poor people to the point where many of the politicians who supported these regulatory changes also were investors in these institutions as well.
That's a good one. So, I mean, this is, we've got examples like that at the state level in Illinois. I know exactly what you're talking about. But what it did was, consolidate, essentially incentivize the consolidation of the industry so only big players could afford to provide these services in institutional type settings, like you're saying, rather than providing a stipend and thus incentive to keep an elderly parent or a family member with a disability in a home setting. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. I remember taking some of these executive directors, and we took 200 elderly people in wheelchairs to sit in at the state capitol in Harrisburg to protest these regulations. So that was my involvement with the civil rights movement. We addressed issues that had a direct effect on the quality of life of people in these communities. And I could spend the rest of the day giving you other examples of how this disabling legislation helped to disrupt these mediating institutions in these communities and result in the kind of chaos that you're seeing in the inner cities today.
This is such an important aspect of the conversation on deregulation because it conjures up, you're going to cut funding for this. It's all about dollars and cents necessarily. And these regulatory environments these regulatory regimes, I should say, create perverse incentives like we're describing. An example you may be aware of as well from Illinois, this because it leveled all the way up to the Supreme Court in a case called Harris v. Quinn. This is 15 years ago when Pat Quinn was governor here, but it was allowing allowing SEIU, government union, to essentially forcibly organize parents who were serving as home health care workers for the disabled children. It was essentially, it was a stipend program, just like we're sort of describing here, you were describing, where a parent got $1,500 a month to keep a disabled child at home and care for that child because it makes a lot more sense. It aligns interests. Who has more interest in the positive well-being of their disabled child than the parent? So there's a program that's actually working. But then the government came in and said, SEIU, you can unionize it, essentially creating a collective bargaining unit and putting a government union between parents and their children. It was lunacy. But it required the Supreme Court to weigh in and declare it such in order for it to be, for sanity to be returned. And so this isn't a dollars and cents thing. This is about, here's a program that makes sense. Here's a program that's working. Here's a program that has broad support. So, but the regulatory environment that was created to serve a key political constituency, a government union, is what needed to be addressed, not a dollar. It wasn't a cutting or an augmenting in terms of dollars and cents.
It really did. And another quick example of when we have a program that we supported where 5 moms came together to work for the Eddie Bauer Company, and they paid a 6th one to care for their children. She stayed home and cared for the children. Well, the state stepped in and says, well, she has to be a licensed daycare provider.
Right.
You know, in other words, and this is an example where certification is supposed to be synonymous with qualification. A mom could raise 5 children successfully under the worst conditions and have them all successful, but don't qualify to provide daycare. Somebody else could have a master's degree and hate children and still get licensed to provide that service.
Are you engaging at all with DOGE on this aspect of the regulatory conversation?
Yes, we are. We hope to reach out to this administration and offer to bring together 30 grassroots leaders from around the country, as we did when Reagan was in office, to bring them together for us to share examples of effective ways to empower these institutions and identify from their perspective what are the rules that need to change. So we are a strong supporter of DOGE, and we hope to be making outreach to this administration to offer help. We have 3,500 grassroots leaders in 39 states. They're black, white, brown, all are convicted to the whole notion of self-development. And so that we're offering to do that. I'm excited about the prospects of them meeting with us and listening to these voices. They have to deliver on. I think Trump is the first post-racial president, and I think there is a promise that was made, and I think it is important for this administration to deliver on that promise to particularly those black and brown people who voted for him in record numbers. What they're looking for is not extra anything. They're looking for government help. All they're asking right now is to change the rules so that their institutions can be the primary care institutions for the people they serve.
This is something, too, that just needs like much greater understanding. This point really needs to be driven home, like you do so well on the full range of issues in terms of helping people across the racial spectrum become self-sufficient, which I know is your life's work. That these regulatory regimes hurt poor people the most. So if you're in the business of helping poor people, just like we talk about when it comes to lawlessness and a variety of other societal ills, if you're really interested in helping people on the lower end of the socioeconomic ladder, then you have to remove these barriers that have been erected to prevent them from helping themselves. I mean, but we need more, Bob Woodson storytelling.
Yeah, when I first came to Washington many years ago, there were like thousands of vendors on the streets of Washington. And it's very interesting, when blacks took over the government, they regulated these vendors off the streets. And as a consequence, crime went up because many of the vendors were setting up outside of businesses, and it deterred crime. And it's just amazing. And for many of the low-income communities, vendors were the only source of stores, grocery stores, and so when they were removed from the streets of our downtown, they were also removed from all the neighborhoods. And so you saw a dramatic increase in violence. Access to goods and services were diminished. I mean, regulation has really ruined this country, and I'm really feel blessed that this president is going to take this seriously by having people with a business background, not a social service background, that profit from the suppression of low-income people.
Are there any other recommended cuts from the federal budget that you could provide for President Trump?
Well, I think, there are several, but he must, rather than just, if you're just concentrating on cuts, you become low-income you become low budget liberals. It is important to redirect and reinvest, so that if you're for limited government, you should be for mediating institutions. In other words, provide an alternative means for people to receive the help that they need. So you have to be just as strong in talking about what alternative ways that people can get their needs met that are within their own control, and how government can be supportive of this, rather than just concentrate on what you can cut. I believe in cutting, but you should be cut by reducing the need for the service. If we're able to reduce gang violence, and as a consequence, fewer people are in need of intensive care, which is like $5,000 a day, then that money should be reinvested in institutions within the community that's helping to reduce the influx of these problems. So we should always be looking for ways to reinvest in a way that drives down costs, at the same time provides the means for people to obtain the services that they need. Only rather than government providing them, the people should be providing them for themselves, with government as an adjunct, but not the primary provider.
Excellent. Low budget liberals. I love that. I'm stealing it.
Yeah, I know you would.
Bob Woodson is, but the Trump administration and this country blessed to have you engaged on this issue, as so many others. Bob Woodson is the founder and president of the Woodson Center, the author of A Pathway to American Renewal. Red, White, and Black, Volume 2 is out. Bob, thank you as always. Appreciate your time.
Thank you always.
Oh, God bless. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
My debt problem started probably about 2016. I needed my life to change financially. I called Trinity, and I ended up joining based on high credit card bills and high interest rate. And my counselor at Trinity has been great, and Trinity has been helping me to get on the right path of paying off these credit card bills, bringing down the interest rate. They have consolidated my bills into one low monthly payment. And now I am finally getting out of credit card debt. So I just want to say thank you, Trinity, for showing me a better and greater path.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976.
My name is Sharon, and soon I will be debt-free for keeps.
1-800-990-6976.